in a good frame of conduct. Very socially engaging subject matter. I yield.
So there was a scale for how we can give ourselves a benefit of a doubt if we raised good kids or not?
I don't know what you mean. There's a scale.
Like, is there a point to say that if I raised a son and he graduated college and he's married, he's a good kid? If he didn't do any of those, he's not? Or if he didn't go to school and he opened a business, that means that he's less successful and I'm a less of a good parent?
Obviously, a debatable topic. You're certainly making a point of how do we measure. In fact, you're making a point about how do we measure a person's virtues, right? That's what it means.
Exactly.
And I don't know that we can have concrete indicators of such measure.
I think Dr. Suhail is listening to us, and I think he can give us some answers here.
Great. Great if he, yes.
Yes. Bismillah, alhamdulillah, salatu wassalam ala rasulullah, ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Of course, that's a big subject, and it's a big challenge. It's the main job of every one of us is one of the two main jobs is to be spouse and to be parent. Of course, in addition, or after being servant of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, all of these titles carry a lot of responsibilities to live up to them. There are no clear indicators or solid indicators, but there are some guidelines. If you manage to get your child to know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and love him, and be motivated to worship him essentially out of love and gratitude, that's a great sign of success. Unfortunately, a lot of parents, they take the shortcut because that requires time and requires efforts. So some parents, they take the shortcut, which is to force their children to worship and to scare them, like you worship so that you will not be thrown in hellfire, and that's it. Just imagine the job of teaching your child about Allah and helping him build that strong relationship and be very grateful and loving of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That requires efforts on yourself and requires a lot of time. But the other one doesn't take anything. It's just forcing, punishing your child if he does not pray, and then scare them with punishment on the hereafter, and that's it. And that's failure, because that can work maybe as long as your child is young, but maybe after that they will, once they have some freedom or some independence, they're not going to do something that you did not convince them with. So that's one thing. Another criteria is for your child to know their mission in life, their purpose, life purpose, why they were created. And again, anything that you want your child to have, you have to have it yourself first and show it in action before you can tell your child about it. Because you can tell your child to do as you do, you cannot tell your child to do as you say. So knowing their purpose in life, that this life has a purpose and they are on a mission, and explaining that mission in the two key words of tazkiyah and islah, that you are in this life here to be all you can be, to develop and realize and leverage all the potential that Allah has given you, to be the best version of yourself. That's the tazkiyah front. And you are in this life to maximize your contribution, your impact, your contribution to the greater good, to make this world a better place, to help people around you be better people. And that can happen only through learning and implementing what you learn, and then you can share it with others. You can translate it into action. The more you learn about the society, the more effective you will be in making it a better society, because you can be engaged in an effective way. You know the system, and you know the people. And vice versa. If you don't know about the society, then you cannot be effective in fulfilling the mission of Islah or Amr bil Ma'ruf and Nahy al Munkar. And that applies to everything else. The more you learn about spouse relationship, the better spouse you'll be. The more you learn about parenting, the better parent you will be. The more you learn about your health, the better your health will be, etc. So everything comes through learning and implementing and developing yourself into a role model for your child and for the people around you. That's your main duty as a Muslim. So that's another criterion. Your child does not have to be in a particular major, as Brother Muhammad asked. Some people may not succeed in school, but they are inclined to do business and they succeed in it. That's no problem. You need to help your child find their calling and their potential and pursue it. Some parents, unfortunately, they try to force their children into a certain route, and children will not excel in something they don't like or they are not convinced with. A lot of physicians, they try to push their children to be physicians. And it's helping your child to grow organically. Your child may like science, may like social science and literatures, whatever. I mean, you can guide, you can advise, of course, you should mentor, but at the end of the day, help them find their niche and excel in it. It may not be something that you want them to do. It might be something else. And I hear about this fight all the time between parents and children, that parents want their children to take a certain route, and children are not comfortable. They get a bachelor, they get a good job, they're happy with it, and the parents keep hammering that you need to do master, or you need to do PhD, or you need to be a lawyer, you need to be a physician, you need to be I don't like it. I'm happy with this. So anyway, so these are some criteria. Of course, the set of values that you instill in your child, raising a child who is honest, truthful, try to perfect everything they do and excel in everything they do, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala commands us to. Whatever we do, we try to perfect it. These are some of the indications or guidelines that can help when parenting, but you're going to have to be ready to do two things. One is to work on yourself, to be a role model, and of course, to work on a family to be a good, solid environment for that child to be raised. And second or third, you need to put the efforts and the time, quality time, where you're going to spoon feed your child, especially when they are still young, very young. Find stories, find ways to communicate those principles and values that we are talking about. Find ways to tell them about Allah, to make them grateful and love Allah. Find ways that are suitable for their age as they grow up. All of that requires a lot of learning on your side, and a lot of discipline, and a lot of efforts and quality time. Unfortunately, the concept of parenting among Muslims is still something that is very superficial. Even marriage itself, people are still being married haphazardly, and then they raise their children haphazardly, which is there's still a lot of parents, they understand their job as parents is to fulfill the needs of their children. That's not parenting. That's, you can call it riaya or rearing, taking care of their needs, provide for them. A lot of parents, or some parents, when you talk to them, they say they have no time. Why? Because they're working hard day and night to provide more for their children, as if that's the only part of their job as parenting. No, you can cut on that, on the time, and provide less, but spend more time with them. That will be much more beneficial, because at the end of the day, you're building a child. You know, when you know those artists, when they're working on a piece, they do little things and then they go take a step back and look at it, and then that's what you're doing with your child. Or like you're building a house and you always are following details, which part is done, painting, I don't know, tile, this and that. It should be at least very similar for raising a child, that what is missing, what is which area need to be reinforced. And so you keep working on your child and making assessment or evaluating and see what else can be done, or what areas is weak and need to be solidified or reinforced.
Thank you, Dr. Ghannouchi. If I can weigh in there, not weigh in there, but just make some very humble comments. From years ago, when I first attended your lectures, the basic and fundamental topic you were bringing up was, how can anybody, and we as Muslims, be good members of the society, which is, I think, fundamental. Surely a holy prophet, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, I think one of his important things to contend was that makarim akhlaqi. So he was there for the improvement of people's behavior, I think, for lack of a better word, and my limited knowledge, of course. And if self-improvement is the fundamental focus, which is, I think, sounds very right and rational to be so, this self-improvement cannot be dissociated from the running and dynamic nature of time. You know, time runs, and in the running of time, we develop from childhood, from infancy to childhood to youth to adolescence, and eventually middle ages, and then finally being old individuals. And this discussion that we are having now is more in the domain of parental responsibility, how good a parent I could be or I was. And obviously I had some drawbacks. I'm fascinated by one phrase that Maulana Rumi had said, that maybe you have got this quotation in Arabic too, but in Farsi it was, I was unripe, I became ripened, and then I am burned. The very developmental nature of especially the spiritual part of development. When at youth you don't know so many things, then in the Middle Ages you tend to think that you have learned, and then now you can give it out. And then towards the later parts of life, like I'm 77, I so much know how much I don't know. But even now I don't know how much I don't know. Surely I know very little. So that really gives a very challenging take into my individual responsibilities to improve myself, but then of course I am the product of my parents' efforts. And I also remember an important chapter in Psychology 101 that I used to take when I was in college. And one chapter was heredity and environment. In the upbringing of any person, you're subject to sets of parameters of catching whatever you develop through genetics from your parents, plus whatever teachings they give to you while you are a child. And then when you get to that stage of life when you can operate somewhat independently, still the outside environment factors play in. I sometimes get to be amazed, again, with this Maulana Jalaluddin, he died at 67, but my God, these things he said, when did he get to know those? Naturally, I go back to what the Quran has given, where Allah Rabbul Alameen says, he gives to who he wants and he doesn't give to who he wants. And that, I think, obviously reflects a level of discretion, may I call it. Obviously, and there's nobody to say how Allah wills. He wills as he wants. And we cannot rationalize it. I don't know if we can rationalize it, but to my humble knowledge, and I don't know a lot to say about this very confidently, it is very difficult to rationalize or square how Allah has willed. And I think the issues of Gaza is a very clear subject matter of how can we place a placeholder for God in what has happened here. So this is perhaps a lot more loaded than a very conclusive outcome. I yield. Thank you.
Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum assalam.
This is really an interesting topic, and I was amazed of the way the conversation started, or the question. And that's why I asked, is like, is there an answer? But truthfully, the more I think about it, it's like, there is a lot of things that can be measured. And why not to create a formula for it? And the formula can. It's like running a regression models. Like if Dr. Hale has a PhD and Mohammed has a high school diploma, most likely the child that Dr. Sahel is going to have is going to be more successful than Mohammed. And if we put some of the variables that Brother Jalal just added, I think you can come up with with a model to give you some indications. Seriously, I'm not joking. I'm very serious now.
That's true.
Like,
that's true. It's possible. I mean,
it's but if the data is collected, it's like if the data is collected, running a regression model to say the indications based on like certain variables, like if we take some certain main variables that indication of success and values that where families coming from and all of these values, I think somebody can come up with a really nice model to say. It's like if you combine all of these variables together, you might have a more successful child than another. Although I think personally, I really think that after my children were 13 years old, it was like very hard to even talk to them or spend even time with them. And I'm saying this because I'm not crying here. Alhamdulillah, they are good kids based on what I think, what I want to believe that they are good kids. I don't know how Dr. Suhail is going to criticize them. But the main point is, I really don't know. It's like who is able to influence, especially kids who are raised here. Kudos for anybody who can influence their kids after they are 13 years old in this country. When the kid is the first year of high school, I think he's out of your control. There is not much to add in whatever you planted, and you try to influence him as a child until that point. But again, it's like we were raised somewhere else. We did have some influence, but probably our influence was more about the community, which now we lack. It's like the values that probably somebody had, like what Brother Jalal was saying, had in back home, or me having my neighborhood back there. The whole town raised the child. It's not only his parents. So these values are not accessible now. So we need to look for more practical values of how you spend your time with your child. Probably, I'm just saying this, I'm adding it, until he's 13, even if he's in your home after he finishes college and he comes back, that doesn't mean that you are in control. He's in control of his own faith and whatever he believes in and whatever he's going to practice.
Everything you mentioned, Brother Muhammad, adds to the responsibility. Number one, the negative influence. Number two, losing control after 13. Number three, lack of support system, like in Muslim countries where there are parents get a lot of help. There are some social norms that can help. All of this adds to the responsibility, makes it even greater responsibility for parents here to work hard in the first few years before any other influence comes to play, before the child become more or less independent. All of that, again, makes the first few years critical for you to do the job. I mean, because as you mentioned accurately, you're going to lose control very quickly. And actually, you should not even rely on control. You should rely on convincing and teaching and providing the example more than forcing your way. Because that forcing is very temporary. After a while, you're going to lose it. So, but if your child look up to you for guidance and see you as an example and role model for them, you can still influence them even when they are young adults and even when they grow up, because they taking things from you not because you force them. They take it because they look up to you, and number two, they know how much you care about them. If you get that message across, if you become the good example for your child, role model, and then you convey or communicate with a lot of compassion, a lot of caring, they will need that even when they grow up, and they will ask for it, for advice and for guidance. But parents who choose the other route, their children cannot wait until they become independent and just get them off their back, because it was all, you do it because I say so, you do it because that's the right way, and they were never given chance to express their opinion or to be different. Again, all the elements that you mentioned makes the first years critical before your child goes anywhere and interact with anybody. They see only their mom and their dad for a couple of years or for a few years. These are the critical years. And always remember that the child is very good observer. Yes, they are not talking, but they are observing and they're connecting the dots. A lot of things you can communicate to your child even before they were able to speak, or when they are very young, because again, scientifically proven that children are very good observers. So if your child grow up and see you taking good care of your prayer, having good relationship with the Quran, and find that harmonious environment at home, it doesn't mean ideal or perfect. There is nothing perfect. There is nothing that is a human. If it is a human, then it is not perfect. But at least people, there is a lot of affection in the house. There is a lot of respect. There is a lot of trust. There might be differences. There might be dispute. Of course, people are living under the same roof, and they will, but they know how to manage their differences and keep the mutual respect, etc. If the child grows up in such environment, that will nurture a lot of good things in them, a lot of positive things. And then, of course, as they grow up, they become even better observer. They will notice if you are truthful, if you're honest, or you're not. They can easily find out. So a lot of things we can communicate to our children just by example. You don't need to do anything. Just imagine in a house, child is born and raised, and there is an adhan, and when the adhan happens, family will stop doing whatever they're doing and gather for prayer with khushu', etc., and they have a place to pray. All of this will communicate to that child. Prayer is extremely important. It's great. Imagine yourself from early on. You tell your children, your child, that everything good happens in your life is from Allah. So they will hear the name of Allah always associated with something good. You bring them a toy, say Allah gave your parents money, and so that we were able to bring you this. Every time you just tell them, basically you translate the ayah, ما أصابك من حسنة فمن الله, or وما بكم من نعمة فمن الله. Imagine this child, what will be their relationship with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if they keep hearing all the time that everything good that is happening in their lives is from Allah. A lot of parents, they do exactly the opposite. The child hears the name of Allah only associated with Jahannam and punishment. That's the only time they hear the name of Allah. So it's very bad. We do a lot of damage without knowing it. I mean, things may look overwhelming, but first of all, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not ask us to do anything more than what we can. And second, Allah promised that those who try, He promised to help them. وَالَّذِينَ جَاهَدُوا فِينَا لَنَهْدِيَنَّهُمْ سُبُلَنَا. If you strive to move in the right direction, life is not easy. The mission that we have is humongous, very demanding. The job of being spouse is very demanding. The job of being parent is very demanding. Life in general became very demanding. But if you have a clear purpose in your life, that will become your guiding priority, that will make things fall in place, and therefore you will not be torn apart between the different forces and the different demands or trends. And then if you try, you do your best, Allah will help you. Allah has many ways that can help you, can put barakah in your time so that you can achieve more with the same amount of time, same amount of money, can guide you to make the right decision, can protect you from things that were coming your way. Number of things, number of ways Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can help you. If you have the right tawakkul, and you do everything you can, and you pray for him persistently, making dua for help and guidance and protection. But these are very powerful tools in our hands. We just have to leverage them. The power of dua, the power of tawakkul. And of course, that all of this comes on top of doing everything you can and doing it right. because the help of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is about things that are beyond your control, not things that you can do. A student, do not say that they come like 9 a.m. or 10 a.m. say, I'm going to go to sleep and Allah will help me tomorrow in the test. No, you stay until you fall asleep maybe on your desk, because that's you reach your limit. Then you can say, I'm gonna go to sleep and inshallah Allah will help me tomorrow and give me tawfiq. And so it is always aqilha wa tawakkul. Do push your limits, do everything you can, and put your full trust in the hands of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That applies to everything and applies to raising children. Allah can make things easier for you, even difficult things. You can see it in life. There are some people who make less money and live better life. There are people who have less maybe knowledge and resources and raise better children. It's a barakah, it's tawfiq. But of course, that's not the substitute for doing your part.
And can we say that all of this is very true and valid, that the element of balancing act, being in the sort of balance, not going to either left or right on an extreme trend, that one always should focus on balance, because perhaps the creation is balanced.
Balance is the main challenge in our lives. It's very easy to succeed in one aspect of life and fail or abandon and neglect the others. But the greatest challenge in our lives is أن تؤتي كل ذي حق حقه. That at work you perfect your work, you try to be a good spouse, good parent, take good care of your health, you spend regular time learning, time with the Quran. I mean, فآتي كل ذي حق حقه, Rasul Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam says. So lot of people, they find it easy to focus on one aspect and they neglect the rest. And life is very tempting to push you in one direction, but you should always do that self-assessment so that you can find, because every now and then balance, we will never be perfectly balanced. Our life will never be perfectly balanced, but we just have to make sure that we don't neglect anything. We don't drop the ball. So when you do an assessment and you find that there is something that is lagging behind, and it's going to happen all the time. All the time, sometimes you get squeezed at work. It takes that away from the time with your family, or time time of your health. You may be in a week where you are squeezed with work, you don't eat healthy, you don't exercise, etc. But always try to make adjustments and make that lack of balance to be only temporary, and try to avoid allowing it to become very severe. Severe meaning dropping the ball completely. That should not happen. But it's a struggle to have a balanced life. It's a struggle. But as I mentioned in this last Jumu'ah, it's like the khushu'ah in Salah. There is no perfect khushu'ah, but there are people who try and people who don't. There are people who say Allahu Akbar and their minds keep going left and right and thinking and planning, and there are people who they may get distracted for a bit and then come back to focus on the Quran they're reading and on the dhikr they're making in ruku and sujood. Balance in life is very similar. It will never be perfect, but there are people who are trying, and there are people who just give up, meaning they focus on some aspects and they drop the rest.
Jazakallah, Dr. Suhail. If nobody has any other question, we see you next week, inshallah.
Inshallah.
Assalamu alaikum.
Can I have one request, please?
Go ahead.
Dr. Suhail, is it possible that one time you address the Surah Al-Asr, give some perspectives about a take that one can draw from that surah, the importance of Surah Al-Asr?
I did Jumu'ah, but inshallah we'll do it one time here, inshallah.
That would be very nice. Thank you. Have a good weekend.
Jazakumullah khair. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.